Experienced hostage negotiator reveals 5 proven steps for a quick and successful negotiation. You love number 3 and number 5. Negotiation is part art, part science. To get what you want, you must know the other side's goals so you can work toward a mutually advantageous result. Not only should you set a clear personal objective, but you should also plan it thoroughly and apply important tools and skills to reach your desired outcome. In today's show, an experienced hostage negotiator reveals tips for a successful negotiation. Watch it now to build powerful negotiation skills and become a better deal maker and leader. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. Today, I'm very happy because the topic is a subject near and dear to my heart. And before I get into the nitty-gritty here, I want to give a quote that basically will sort of introduce the subject. Michael Weston said, "To win a negotiation, you have to show you're willing to walk away. And the best way to show you're willing to walk away is to walk away." Think about it. So, 5 proven steps. Number 1, know exactly what your side wants. And the way you can tell, you want to go through the analytical approach called 5 W's plus H. So what do you want? You need to be clear about what you want in a negotiation. Before you walk into that room and sit, face to face with the other side, you need to know exactly what you want. And most importantly, why do you want it? Do you want it bad? Or just like, hey, if I have it, if I don't have it, that's okay. It's very important for what do you need? What do you need really bad? And what can you live without? And this sort of helps you delineate the parameters of your offer. It talks about your constraints. It talks about your strengths. It talks about your weaknesses, right? So number 1, what do you want? Why do you want it? And what do you need really bad? And what can you live without? Another thing that you have to pay attention to is the key players. Who are the key players on your side? Who are the decision makers? Who are the major, the stakeholders, right? The thing here is that you have to understand, how would the situation, how would an eventual outcome affect your key customers, your key suppliers, regulators? How would regulators take the decision once you reach a decision? So you have to sort of engage into this multi-dimensional analysis before even walking in the negotiation room. Another question you have to really ask, and this will help you know exactly what your side wants, is when must you get what you want? Here we're talking about timing, right? Are you flexible or not when it comes to timing? When must you get what you want? So for instance, if you're negotiating something and this thing is time sensitive, time is not on your side, so this could add an extra layer of pressure on you or on the other side. Doesn't really matter. But the idea here is to spend time going through all these questions, to spend time going through what I call this intellectual gym, this intellectual practice, so you're able to identify, where you're sitting exactly. Another question that's very important is, where must the negotiation take place? Where is your key audience, right? So because you want to identify where your key audience is. Let's say, for instance, you're negotiating something, you are a startup or you are a big company and you are somewhere you're negotiating in Asia, but your key audience is in the United States. That could be an element that you need to pay attention to when negotiating with the Chinese authorities, for instance. All right. So I've talked about the 5 W's. So what, why, who, when, and where. Now you got to add the H. So how will things shape up after the negotiation? So you got to think about 3 scenarios, right? The ideal scenario, so that's the best scenarios, the average scenario, and the worst scenario. How will things shape up for you, for your party, for your side after the negotiation under each scenario? And what are the things that you have to do? What are the risks attached to each scenario, because even if you win, even if you have the best outcome, there are still some risks. So you want to think about those things beforehand. Now, the bottom line here is that, you want to find out your ideal resolution. And to know that you cannot get your ideal resolution without knowing exactly what your side wants. And by knowing your ideal resolution, you can also identify where you will walk away. What kind of decision won't really, you will be dissatisfied with. All right? I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. We're still having a nice conversation today about negotiation, and I'm giving you 6 proven steps for a quick and successful negotiation. I've given you 1 already. Let's move on to number 2. Before we move on to number 2, I want to again give a very powerful quote about negotiation. This comes from Lee Steinberg. The only thing certain about any negotiation is that it will lead to another negotiation. And this is so true. This is really true. Which is why it's very important to cultivate the right relationship throughout the negotiation cycle, and not to always think about winning, because if you're going to go back and negotiate with the same person, with the same interlocutor, you don't want to meet someone who is antagonistic, right? Now, number 2, gather intel on the other side. So first step, know exactly what you want, what your side wants. Number 2, gather intelligence on the other side. Again, here we are going to use the same process that we use, the 5 W's plus the H. You got to ask yourself, what do I know about the other side? Because the information is power, folks. We live in a globalized world where information can be obtained through various means, electronic, physical, human, you name it. So what you want to do is you want to really sort of put the other side under the corporate microscope, and you want to research everything. You want to research the background. Of course, here, there is even an industry called competitive intelligence, and they provide that kind of service. But again, trying to do things as thoroughly and legally as possible, right? So you want to know a lot about the operations of the other side. You want to know what the outcome will mean for them, the different scenarios. You want to know about their constraints, right? So for instance, you want to know who the key players are, the decision makers. You want to know the personal histories, the personal stories of the negotiators, the chief negotiators. You want to know their key priorities, why, what's firing them up, what is their priority. Another thing you want to know here is that you want to know the personal, social, and professional aspirations of the negotiators. Do they have any time constraints? Are they on the thread? Do they have a deadline to meet? What do they really need? Right? Where must the negotiation take place for them to be happy? For them to be satisfied? For them to feel like, oh, okay, we are on equal footing? Where is their key audience? So you want to really think about those things. Another thing you want to think about is that how will things shape up for the other side after the negotiation? So by going through the same exercise that you went through yourself, this could help you identify where you stand and where they also stand. And this is very critical, because before you start fighting someone, even though I don't regard negotiation as a fight, but before you start, dealing with someone in a bartering way, you want to know a little bit, as much as possible, where they're coming from, what's moving them, what they're thinking, right? Now, another thing, I know I spoke earlier about who are the key players, the decision makers, but you really want to know the biggie. You want to know the person who has the ultimate decision power. You want to know the person who is calling the shots, and you want to get as much intel as possible on that person, because at the end of the day, people you have in front of you, if they're just if they're just the representatives, if they're just spokesperson, you're not really going anywhere by talking to them. Of course, you have to talk to them because they are the representative that the big man or the big woman has chosen. But ultimately, you need to gather intel on that person who calls the shot. All right. So the bottom line here is that you want to know which outcome will be a complete humiliation for the other party. Let me repeat that. The reason why you gather intel on the other side is not just to find out what will be a great outcome for them. No. You want to find out what will be a great or complete humiliation for them. Because you don't want them to feel humiliated. This is a bad place to go. I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. We're still continue our conversation today about 5 proven steps for a quick and successful negotiation. And before I get into number 3, I just want to give you another quote, and a very powerful quote by Brian Kozlow. During a negotiation, it would be wise not to take anything personally. If you leave personalities out of it, you'll be able to see opportunities more objectively. Again, by Brian Kozlow. He is so right. And this is very important. It is important to sort of distance yourself emotionally from the negotiation and look at things as a house of cards. Look at things as chess. You're playing a game here, and everybody's trying to get the best outcome for himself or herself. So that's why you need to, if you're able to distance yourself personally from the whole equation here, you should be able to, and that's number 3, come up with solution scenarios. You want to craft an ideal solution for both parties. Here, I'm talking about a win-win solution, right? You want to think about your ideal outcome, your worst outcome, and the other side's worst outcome, right? This is what I call humiliation threshold. So you have your ideal outcome, your worst outcome, which is your walkaway point, and the other side's worst outcome, the humiliation threshold. Now, remember that they also have the power to walk away. So if they feel humiliated, they will walk away, and you don't want that, because you need this negotiation to work as much as they do. Right. Now, remember, you cannot tell exactly the other side's ideal solution, nor do you care. You may have an idea, but not a clear one, right? So once you understand your objectives, especially the priorities that you had to focus on, you can determine which areas will be potential areas of mutual agreement. This is very important. This is what I call an area of compromise, right? A common denominator. Something that works for both parties. Something that is not as great for either party, but great given the circumstances for each party. All right. Now, if if somehow you're not able to find an area of mutual agreement, think about prospects to trade off as concessions, right? So you have to think about what would be the worst solution for either person. Now, when it comes to potential solutions, this is very important. You want to list those solutions. You want to visualize them. You want to see their impact on your side, and you want to see the impact on the other side. This is a completely sort of a solo exercise, but you have to do it, because before you walk into that room, you need to be able to tell them, hey, listen, I've thought about solutions, and I think you might like this, and I think this will work for you. And you have to be able to back it up. You have to be very convincing for them to believe you. All right? I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. We're still having a conversation about negotiation here. If you like the content so far, please consider subscribing to our channel. Turn on the notification bell so you can be notified whenever we have a new show. We drop this kind of shows every single day, rain or shine. Like this content, share, and comment below so we can be on the same page. Now, another quote here before I go to number 4. No issue can be negotiated unless you first have the clout to compel negotiation. And this came from Saul Alinsky. No issue can be negotiated unless you first have the clout, the influence that will, to compel negotiation. So, number 4, establish the alternatives. So what you want to do here is that, and in any negotiation, there is something called a bottoming out point, right? So this is the point where the whole conversation might collapse like a house of cards, right? So you have either sides is just not happy with this is basically what I call the walk away point, right? So every side have a bottom line that they will not transgress or cross, right? So if you're not able to intersect your views with the other side, or there's no zone of agreement, then the thing that's going to happen is that the talks will likely fall to pieces, right? So now this is where you have to establish the alternative. You have to establish what really matters to you and what matters to the other side, right? And there is something called BATNA, and this was actually developed by Harvard, by Harvard Law School professors back in the days. And BATNA is really the fallback position, right? So BATNA, stands for the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. All right. So what you're trying to really have here is that you want to have a plan to develop the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So how do you do this? List all alternatives to the current negotiation. In other words, what could you do if the talks fall through, if the negotiations fall through? The next thing you want to do is you want to evaluate the worth of each alternative. So for your side, how much is each alternative worth? Next thing you want to do is you want to select the alternative that would provide the highest value to you. Right? This is what we call the BATNA. This is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So after determining your BATNA, you want to calculate the lowest value deal that you are willing to accept. All right. Again, folks, this approach has been developed by Harvard Law School, and it all centers around the concept of BATNA, and this has been used many times in corporate negotiations, in political negotiations, and it's a very, very well known sort of scheme, sort of framework, and that can help you establish the alternatives in a particularly difficult negotiation round. All right, I will be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. We're still continuing our conversation, and we're talking about 5 proven steps for a quick and successful negotiation, and I'm going to talk about number 5. But before I do this, I want to give a shout out to all our millions of fans and viewers in Africa. Particularly, we have Nigeria, we have South Africa, we have Angola, we have Cameroon, we have Algeria, we have Tunisia. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate that. We also want to thank our viewers and listeners in the United States and Canada for your support. This is fantastic. I want to quickly give another quote here before I delve into number 5. Negotiating a deal can only take place when there are 2 parties. If you wait too long, the other party may already have negotiated a deal with someone else. Bob Irwin said this a long time ago. Robert Irwin, negotiating a deal can only take place when there are 2 parties. If you wait too long, the other party may already have negotiated a deal with someone else. Now, when you negotiate, try to bring fairness to the negotiating table, right? Especially if I was quoting earlier. I said earlier that negotiation will lead to another negotiation, right? So you want to establish a durable business relationship with the partner, and you want to see these things from the get-go. You want to tell people that, you are basically here to have a deal, not to win over someone else, but you are willing to strive to bring fairness in the conversation. And this is very important. And trying to find out what is fair, and ask the other side what is fair. You can even, bring independent advisors, or independent observers to propose what is fair, right? And this is how you are able to win over time. And the thing is that because equality, equity, need, and status quo are potential outcomes, according to Harvard researchers. But the idea here is that the research has shown also that the lasting approach here is equality or equity. All right, so bring fairness to the negotiation table. Now, folks, that's about it for today. I want to quickly recap today's conversation. So, the 5 proven steps for a quick and successful negotiation are: know exactly what your side wants, gather intel on the other side, come up with solution scenarios, establish the alternatives, bring fairness to the negotiation table. All right, and today's call to action is very simple. So, we like to give a call to action at the end of every show. And I just want to say, do your homework and see the situation from all angles. You want to define your goals, right? Before having a negotiation, think about the timing. Is the time right? Determine the best timing for the discussion. Throughout the conversation, remain quiet, remain calm, and avoid getting emotional, right? Try to be a good listener. I want you to listen. Another thing you need to think about is to ask exactly what you want, right? And avoid finger pointing. Again, this goes back to getting emotional, right? We're not here in a negotiation. Don't focus on the personalities. Those are distractions. Focus on the issues. And the best way to win in the long run is to think win-win, right? Not win-lose or lose-win, win-win. All right? I'll catch up with you later. Remember, thank you for listening, and remember, stay marvelous.